After playing Battlefield 2042 on live servers this past week, Halo Infinite looks absolutely gorgeous. The environments are setting
is
matters from
rebranded
back
Far Cry
to
6
the
multi MCU traffic.
the lighting settings.
There truly has been too much. Hey everyone, I'm RVRocks, and there has been a lot of news/releases of first-person shooters in the past 2 months or so, and needless to say, I am loving it. While it is a little overwhelming, it's fun to see a lot of games release in a short period of time, so there's always something fresh to play and talk about. And since it is both topical and gives me some time to think about something else while this longer project I'm working on eats me alive, I thought I would sit down and do some lightning round quick thoughts on all these different games that have had either a major update released, an actual game released, or just news released about them. Anyways, without any further ado, okay, so I've been ignoring this game for a bit because of the shitty situation at Activision Blizzard. Personally, I've been boycotting Overwatch, only ever really booting up the game when adjusting my mouse sensitivity for other games. And due to the fact that Overwatch 2 is in fact a video game that is supposedly coming out at some point, and the fact that my first video on Overwatch is one of the most popular videos I have on the channel, I feel the need to talk about some of the things they have announced for this much anticipated, much loathed sequel. 5v5 is dumb. It feels like a band-aid on a bullet hole. I already didn't love roll queue, feeling that the system just made it so people in lower ranks won't go 5 DPS and 1 healer, and so people in higher ranks won't go goats. But at the end of the day, it felt more like a way of limiting the player from making the wrong choice than actually limiting the game to not benefit that style of play. This feels like another change in that vein. Rather than figuring out how to balance the tank class to not make off-tank feel useless and double shield not complete ass to play against, they instead just chose to only have one tank and mitigate both those problems. But we don't even know if it'll work? I have a lot of questions for the design team over at Overwatch because ever since Kaplan left, I feel like things have gotten worse. Whether or not these worse decisions are why he left or because of his absence is also a possibility I have stewing. Conceptually, it feels like they're trying to balance every character into a more damage-based one because everyone liked playing the damage characters, but I feel like that removes some of the strategy, and sweeping changes like this remove some of what I love about certain characters. Sombra is no longer an asset to the team by coordinating and having the team pick off certain characters. She's just been changed to another damage dealer. Bastion's changes are fine, I guess, but instead of making a 2-in-1 character, his changes basically make him into just another character with a strong ability. Reinhardt is balanced to be more aggressive, but what's exactly stopping him from just playing with his shield up anyways? Not only do these changes take away from the foundations of these characters that, need I say, you came up with, you designed these guys, but it also feels founded on fallacies. Like, realistically, you can't balance characters around how you want people to play them, you have to balance them around how they will be played. Shields were strong in Overwatch 1. Just because Blizzard developer Dave likes to play aggro Rein doesn't mean the shield's gonna get any weaker. And what does this one tank system make characters who are already lauded as bad tank picks in Overwatch 1? Orisa, Roadhog, Ball. In my experience, they were all shat on when they were picked by one of our 2 tank players. But if there's only one tank? I don't know, man. I feel like the more they announce for this game, the less excited I am for it. Halo Infinite multiplayer has me mixed, because on one hand, it's Halo, and I like Halo. Seeing all those old guns again with new flair and upgraded super nice graphics, it gave me a sense of joy. However, on the other hand, it doesn't really feel like Halo. Halo Infinite is for sure a more homogenized experience of what I recognize as Halo. With faster movement than what I would expect from a Halo game, tons of different little gadgets for you to mess around with, and a whole lot of smaller inconveniences that unfortunately you just kinda have to expect with these newer games. And these things are small, but they definitely bugged me. Customization is usually a pretty big deal as far as Halo goes, but in Infinite, a lot of stuff seems like it's gonna be locked behind a battle pass. And I guess since multiplayer is free, I can't really fault Halo for following a system that the industry clearly benefits from, a system that I myself have bought into multiple times, but I also don't love that this is the direction that Halo has taken. A battle pass with tasks like kill this many people with this weapon or do this thing so many times works better for a large-scale battle royale game than a small-scale arena shooter. In my experience, I've seen a lot of people camping weapons, hiding behind corners, and doing whatever just to get their battle pass challenges done. And that's frustrating regardless of your playstyle. The Master Chief Collection has actually managed a pretty good middle ground in this regard, and frankly, with all the changes that 343 has been implementing at such a rapid pace, I have no idea if this will even be a problem by the time this video is done. Seriously, trying to write about anything involving Halo Infinite has been a hassle, because a lot of the things that I'm having gripes with are things that are being addressed by 343 as we speak. As for the gameplay itself, it's good, but I think it lacks identity. Halo has always had a more laid-back approach to multiplayer, boots on the ground, standard arena-style shooter. And while the series has definitely had its advancements since I fell out of being a hardcore Halo multiplayer guy, a recent stroll through the Master Chief Collection has shown me that if anything, multiplayer has more or less maintained its identity. Halo proper has always had the identity of being a more standard shooter with no fancy gimmicks, but with Infinite, it feels like they are trying to be more like the Call of Duties or Battlefields of the world. Which isn't to say that it's bad. In fact, I think it plays really nice in motion. But it feels like in a world with so many shooters that come out every 2 seconds, Halo Infinite really does the least to stand out from what I've played. But I guess if I wanted to play a classic Halo style shooter, then I would play... Earlier this year, I made a video about this little game called Splitgate. It's Halo with portals. It's fun. When I first made that video, the game was still in beta, but now it's in its full public release, dubbed Season 0. And while it hasn't really done that much to blow me away, it's maintained itself as a good time. Changes that have been made since I first talked about it include a kill cam, a plethora of new game modes, one of which being Oddball, which I love, no longer having alternate game modes on a timer Splatoon style, and the world's best addition to this game, a small boost to help you vault over objects. The amount of times I sailed into different objects hoping my character would just somehow climb over it in this game's beta was astronomical. And finally having a vault, albeit a bit of a clunky one, is a godsend. A lot of my major criticisms with the game haven't been addressed, but it's only been a month or two, so you know what, I'll let it slide. Although, to be honest, I don't know if the hype of the initial concept is enough to keep people playing this game long term. It wasn't enough for me, so I hope they introduce some fun new stuff to keep it engaging for longer amounts of time. The core is definitely there. Now I just need a reason to log on. Battlefield 2042 had its open beta a couple weeks ago, and it got a resounding meh from me. Then the full game came out, and oh my god, it's just gotten that much worse. To the game's credit, it's fun. I liked it quite a bit in all honesty, but it just has a general lack of polish over the entire experience for me to find it super engaging. The intermittent gunplay is pretty good, and I've always enjoyed Battlefield's open, large-scale warfare gameplay. But the same gripes I have with Halo Infinite come into play here, albeit in a lesser state. Whereas Halo Infinite wasn't my favorite due to how it was more generic than Halo Past, Battlefield feels generic, but Battlefield's always been pretty generic, so I don't know if I can fault that as a weakness of the game, or just mark down this whole series as not for me. What I can say is that I am definitely not a Battlefield guy, and while I did play this game and find some joy in it, seeing all the people who have this series as a favorite of theirs hate it does not bode well. This large-scale combat is always super engaging to me, and I like the movement options available that from my understanding haven't always been there. But with the bugs, the flawed specialist system, and I won't harp on this for too long given that it's likely not the game itself's fault, but the game's very inconsistent performance on my PC, I actually refunded this game a couple hours into it. In fact, I didn't even bust out any recording software for it, so all this background footage you're seeing is from various news outlets around YouTube. Maybe I'm judging too harshly, and it's not fair to review this game without having played more of it, but especially with the hardcore community's reaction, I had no qualms with keeping DICE from having my money on this one. I had my fun with it, and I'm sure there's still plenty of fun to be found in it, it's just painfully unremarkable. You want my take? Go get Star Wars Battlefront 2. Unironically, it does everything Battlefield 2042 wants to do for less money and has a Star Wars coat of paint over it, meaning that it has a strong visual identity. Seriously, this game's awesome. And rounding out today's video is a game that is very different from the last ones we've talked about, but it's a first-person shooter nonetheless. In my house, Far Cry is kind of a big deal. You see, my sister is in love with the franchise, so every time some new content drops for Far Cry, it's kind of a holiday around here. And she actually recommended that I check this one out, so this part of the video is her fault. Since I love me a good open world, Far Cry 6 slid right onto my radar, and I got basically what I expected. Far Cry 6 is a very large open world game set in the fictional country of Yara. Like every Far Cry game, things start out innocently enough, but eventually you bump into the leader of a resistance fighting against a dictator-like figure and become their #1 agent for the job. All the Far Cry games kind of fall into this formula, and it's one that I actually really like. An open world that is mostly lush greenery, an overbearing antagonistic force with camps and outposts everywhere, driving that for some reason still has yet to give you a third-person option. But the standout thing for me in Far Cry was, despite all of this, there was still a lot of campiness, cheese, and quirkiness to the whole experience. Whether it be in content like the weird-ass DLCs for every game, or characters like the Seeds, Buck, or Herc, Far Cry always had this fun personality. Although, from my limited experience with the game, Giancarlo Esposito, who is really good in basically everything, is just not that interesting. Everything interesting about him comes from his interactions with his son, Diego, which is for sure a new angle for a villain in the series. But making Castillo just your fill-in-the-blank evil dictator is something I don't think was necessary in order to achieve that dynamic. Like, what about Anton Castillo is any different from, say, Moff Gideon? Because of this and the frankly lackluster opening, I thought that Far Cry 6 and its definitely not political story would end up as a more serious and thus more boring spin on the franchise. And then I met Juan. While the story itself may be more serious than other games, the gameplay and the world around it maintain that blanket Far Cry quirkiness that the series has become known for, and this delighted me to no end. The opening of this game did this whole Last of Us style interwoven cutscene narrative action set piece, and that really rubbed me the wrong way. As for the gameplay itself, well, it's Far Cry. I saw a lot of publications reviewing this game poorly because it had too much mission variety and an unfocused plot, and I have to ask myself, what did you expect? Far Cry as a franchise is known for the open world aspect more than anything else, and having so much to do in that world. I mean, I definitely don't speak for everyone, but while the stories usually are pretty good, I don't necessarily think that they are the main selling point for this franchise. Personally, I'm just satisfied having a big map to explore and bad guys to shoot at, which coincidentally is something that Far Cry 6 excels at. This game is not one that I see myself playing to completion, but rather it falls into a category where I just kinda go into it to do a few small missions and shoot guys for like an hour and jump out. Kinda the same place I'm at with games like Shadow of War, Mad Max, Avengers, and Just Cause 3. Although, I will say, this game is beautiful. They say that Yaran Sunset ain't like anything else. And if you think that my content isn't like anything else, then why don't you subscribe to RVRocks and ring the bell, like this video, and comment your thoughts on any of the games I talked about here today. Think I was too critical of Overwatch 2, too dismissive of Splitgate, too forgiving of Far Cry? Let me know your thoughts either in the comments or on my Twitter at RVRocks. I always encourage people to comment because down here in the small YouTuber depths, you actually know that I will be seeing every comment. And that's a luxury you're only gonna get down here. But before you do any of that, I have been RVRocks and thank you so much for watching. See ya!